Hello everybody. If you ask Midjourney how Japanese design looks, then you get answers like this or this. But I think most of us feel like Japanese design looks more like that. So in today's video, I want to take a deep dive into Midjourney and try to find characteristics, understand the datasets that are being used to improve my prompting with AI to generate output that is actually authentic and convincing, but also to understand and deepen my knowledge of what Japanese design means, what is Japanese characteristics, symbolism, stereotypes that I can use or avoid in order to generate the effect that I want. Let's start, right? So at the top, you will always see the prompt that I used, and then I will share the images that Midjourney gave me, right? So I was using Midjourney version 7, the latest version at the moment, in the default settings. So no crazy variety, no extreme chaos modifiers or anything else, right? In a square aspect ratio. So those are the default settings I used. So I wanted to start very basic, right? What is Japanese design? What does Midjourney understand to be Japanese design? And I was quite surprised to see the results. And I mean, obviously I did that several times to verify, but this is more or less the outcome that you get. Like very clear and strong symbolism, right? We have this red circle that is prevalent in the flag of Japan, symbolizing the sun, right? It's in a lot of these images that I generated. It's a very clear symbol that represents or is strongly related to Japan. Then we have this, maybe it's a monk, at least he is appearing as an Asian person to Western people for sure. Then we have trees, like bonsai style or Asian stereotypical trees, the temple. I feel like Japanese design in Midjourney's data bank is really strongly correlated with like the stereotypical first associations that people have with the country. So the next thing I did was try Japanese minimalism, right? I wanted to guide it towards more showing the design actually as objects. We still do feel, or I still feel like it's pretty similar. It's just graphically more modern, right? Compared to the previous page. This looks a little bit old school in parts. This is a little bit more modern, more clean. But still, we have the similar symbolism. We have sakura, the cherry blossoms. Maybe we have added now water in terms of reflection, Zen vibes, right? Temple optics. We still have the red circle, Mount Fuji or mountain, like just generally mountains. The small bonsai trees, rocks, white, clean. So I think we still move within the same bracket, right? The same associations, very stereotypical symbolism. And then I try to go further down the road using Japanese aesthetic. And here we are much more realistic, much less graphical, right? These could also potentially be photos, but the symbols are the same. And now I want to show you something to also make you guys understand that that's very distinct for Japan. Because if I do German design, then we get something very different, right? Germany is known for cars, all right? So maybe that's why we have a car here. It's an old car though. We do see that Midjourney does associate the flag again with German design. I'm not sure why the chair is here, but we have a chair here. Overall, it's very different from what we have with Japanese design, right? The symbols are much less clear. For Scandinavian design, as a third comparison, we get like 100% interior shots. So that does again tell us a lot about the data bank that was used to train this algorithm, right? I think also that is the first association that I have when I think about Scandinavian design. And then to basically further test AI, I wanted to use Japanese together with a product category as a whole. And I find it to be really interesting. It's like very arranged. It looks very traditional or nostalgic. I wouldn't necessarily say it speaks to me in terms of being Japanese design. If you look at other product categories, consumer electronics, it still feels like very retro nostalgic to me, also in terms of color, and the way it's presented also feels like a little bit curated museum vibe, right? So they just gather different objects from the similar time and arrange it, and then they showcase it. That's how it feels to me. So it is detached from our current understanding, modern understanding of what Japanese consumer electronics would stand for, or kitchen appliance. And then we have Japanese storage solutions. I think that this is much closer to Japanese design because it already does show a context of use. And there's much more room to also apply Japanese symbols or stereotypes or characteristics, right? So I feel like also there is much less old school photography available of Japanese storage solutions, which is why also the output is much closer to our current understanding of what this may represent, right? And then I just type Japanese everyday object and we go back to the retro vibes. Very curated, museum-like. And then the last one was Japanese furniture. Very wood-heavy. So I think in that sense it does have it right, but also very curated. Some more realistic than others, right? The use of wood is like very heavy, very dominant. I mean, this thing is like a complete solid block of wood. I don't think that's how Japanese people would have handcrafted these objects, but yet they do evoke something Japanese, the way they are built and structured, and they already give more insight into what Japanese design might be than some of the other product categories, right? Like consumer electronics, for example. But we're still, I feel like, missing the main point here, or the specifics. So I prompted Japanese couch. And I think this is also interesting, right? As soon as we get context, the effect is much better because we can again place objects that are associated with Japan into the scene. I would also say that this couch is looking somewhat Japanese inspired, right? It's very big though. It's low to the ground wood. And yet I think most of the others are not necessarily typically Japanese to me, right? They look like classic design furniture, but with Japanese graphic layer on top of it, right? So it's like the archetypical couch, but with a layer or a skin of Japanese graphic symbolism. To me, this is a failure. This is not what Japanese couches look like or would look like, I wouldn't assume. So I tried to do the same thing for German couches. And I think Midjourney did the exact same thing to German couches, right? So it took the archetypical shape of what a couch is within the data set. For Germany, we have completely different colors, completely different graphics, right? Different settings, but I wouldn't recognize them as being German design couches or German couches at all. This could be anywhere, right? I don't know why this would be a German road compared to a Polish road. So again, I did the example with Scandinavian Couch. And here I think it's interesting again because we already saw that Scandinavian is automatically already much more heavy laden with interior and furniture. So the shots that we get is also more design heavy. And I feel like what this tells me is that the data bank for Scandinavian couches, the encoding within the data set is much more up to date. There's much more material to source from for the AI to make these images. So this was what I was hoping to achieve also for Japan, but then to be much more understandable as Japanese design rather than a couch with Japanese decorated fabric or textile. And I did that same experiment also with headphones and other objects, right? And I do feel like the same thing happened, but we do still see a clear difference, like different colors, different materials compared to the others, different graphics. So if we look at these objects now, this is apparently what Japanese objects look like to Midjourney if we do not specify what object category or what style we want them to be in. Then you get objects that rely heavily on graphic details that create associations with Japan, but is far from anything modern design related. So in the next step, I added 2 words to the prompt, which is minimalistic and modern. So now I give Midjourney already a pre-selected category to work in, and within that category, it applies now some of these symbols and stereotypes and associations that we saw from the previous rounds. And I'm really happy with these results. These are actually things that I am looking for when I try to get inspired for objects like this. I mean, obviously the setting works again really well, but also the colors, the materials, the architecture and general shape of these objects, the arrangement, very soft and round. I do recognize many of the guidelines that I identified in my previous video, right? The use of color, the tactility of the materials, the arrangement, the composition. Here the associations are not as prominent, they're much more subtle and in the details rather than like dominating the whole thing. Within the rubric of modern minimalism, we can now much better create the distinction between the different variations of Japanese, German, and Scandinavian design. If we look at what Midjourney and AI understands to be Japanese design, then we have to understand that there's like different layers and different tunings that we have to define in order to get the results we want. All right, this was it. My review on what AI thinks what Japanese design looks like. I do feel like I learned a lot, like how to use symbols, but also when using symbols and associations is going too far and leave just a superficial object behind that doesn't represent Japanese design anymore. I also learned more about German design and Scandinavian design, and I feel like this video taught me to think more thoroughly about what the data bank could look like that trained this model to begin with in order to adjust my expectations and formulate my prompt in a way that I already target the right data set within the algorithm to get the best results. All right, I hope you learned something, take something away from it. See you around. Adios, amigos.